Okay, we should be live now on Facebook as well. I'll double check. Let us know you can hear us loud and clear. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight. We have an extremely special guest tonight, a very, very dear friend and a huge musical inspiration.
Who's that?
Not only is you, Mr. Beck.
I thought we were going to have somebody special.
Someone very special, such a world-class producer, artist, musician, songwriter. I'd love to just do a little intro of you before we kick off, if that's okay, Roscoe.
That's so embarrassing. Okay, go ahead.
Roscoe Beck is an Austin, Texas-based musician and record producer. He has recorded and performed with artists as diverse as Leonard Cohen, Joe Ely, Jimmy Witherspoon, Jennifer Warnes, Carrie Rodriguez, and the Dixie Chicks. After earning a reputation from Austin to LA as bassist with artists Eric Johnson, Robben Ford, and others, Beck made his debut as producer in 1986 on Jennifer Warnes' highly acclaimed collection of Leonard Cohen songs, famous Blue Raincoat, one of my favorite records of all time. Soon after, he co-produced Leonard Cohen's breakthrough album, I'm Your Man, and work with Cohen as his musical director would continue through Leonard's final concert in December 2013. Most recently, Roscoe co-produced Jennifer Warnes' first new record in 15 years, Another Time, Another Place, Another Extraordinary record. And Roscoe is currently working with Eric Johnson on his next release. Roscoe, how have you fitted all of this in such a short life? You're still a spring chicken.
Please don't ask me how old I am.
Well,
I'm no spring chicken.
Could I start with a question about how you and Leonard Cohen met?
Of course. Well, it was a series of circumstances that led to that. It could be a long story. I'll try to make it as short as possible while still giving you all the info. So in 1979, I was a member of a band called Passenger. And you know some of those people. And we had material recorded, original material recorded, and we had cassette tapes, which were the format of the day, which we were sending around. A friend came through town touring with a band and came in to hear Passenger and enjoyed it, and then asked if I had any recordings. I gave him one of these cassettes. And maybe a month or two later, this friend, whose name is Randy Cobb, was on a session in LA with Henry Louis producing. And wow. Henry Louis, of course, at that time was Joni Mitchell's producer.
Yes.
And as it turns out, at that very same time, was also producing Leonard Cohen for an album that would become Recent Songs. But anyway, so this friend, Randy Cobb, played Henry Louis this cassette tape of Passenger, which had my name and my phone number on it. And the next thing I knew, I got a phone call from Henry Louis.
Wow.
With his German-American accent. He said, "Oh, Roscoe, I have this tape and I like what I'm hearing. I would be interested in producing your band if you would, be interested. I would like to shop your tape." And I was like, "Absolutely." And then he said, "Oh, and would you be interested in playing with Joni Mitchell?"
Wow.
And again, absolutely. And Henry said, "Well, I can't make you any promises, but if you and the band can make your way out here, I'll introduce you to Joni and we'll see what happens." So that's exactly, we packed up our cars, all five of us, and drove out to LA and met Henry and met Joni over at A&M Studios, where she was making her Mingus album.
Was this the first time you'd been to LA?
Second for me.
Second.
I had gone the year before, just on a. Actually, we were dropping off tapes at various record companies.
Wow.
And we actually, in those days, it was possible. We did get some response. We had 3 major labels fly to Austin, Texas to hear Passenger. Capitol, Chrysalis, and Warner Brothers all flew to Austin. But anyway, back to the too long story. So we were hanging out in LA and waiting to see if Joni might take interest in us. And then one morning, Henry called and he said, I need Roscoe at the studio. And he was at Wally Hyder's with Leonard. And he only asked for me, but I took a couple of the guys along. And so I showed up at Wally Hyder's. On the way there, I must say this, on the way to the studio, and this is somewhat embarrassing to recall, but remember the year is 1979, and Leonard wasn't exactly everywhere in 1979.
Yes.
It was after the somewhat disastrous record with Phil Spector.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, on the way to the studio, I was thinking, Leonard Cohen. I know the name. What are his songs? And oddly, I flashed all the way back to a bookstore in Poughkeepsie, New York, where I grew up until age 14. And I had this vision of these black and white Leonard Cohen posters for his first album. And I went, yes, Canadian poet, Suzanne Takes You Down, So Long, Marianne. Okay, yeah. Because I wanted to know who I was about to meet, and I was putting it all together in my mind. But then I did, and walked into the studio expecting actually a band. I thought he just needed a bass player to round out the band. But I walked into the control room, and it was Henry, who by then I knew well, a second engineer, and Leonard. That was all.
Wow.
And
just coming in for overdubs.
Not even that. He was just kind of trying out new songs. And so we're all standing in the control room. And Leonard opens his guitar case and pulls out his nylon string guitar, and he goes, well, here's a song. And he played the Smoky Life.
Wow.
Just solo, one time. And then Henry went, okay, fine, let's record. Just like that. So it was just Leonard and I had a fretless electric bass and a fretted electric bass.
Did they have amps in the studio or a head or anything like that?
I think I was direct.
You were direct.
We might have played it all in the control room. I can't remember for sure. There was a lot of activity in the control room. And actually, I don't even remember going out into the studio. We must have gotten some kind of isolation, I suppose. But eventually, I guess we did. But he showed me the song in the control room. I think I plugged in direct and we played it. And it went fine, but there was only one problem. In the bridge section, Leonard, the bridge is, remember when something started fading, doo-doo, da-da-doo, doo-doo. It's got that, dotted quarter push. And every time that came up, Leonard would rush the heck out of it and go, doo-doo, da-da-da, doo-doo. He'd really kind of fall into it, and I think my producing career started right then because, it was a little, we couldn't lock into that dotted quarter figure. And so I said, Leonard, could you hear maybe some light brushwork or something on this song? And he was like, yes. Do we have a drummer? And I was like, oh, yeah, brought one. He had no drums, of course. He had a stick bag. So Henry Louis pulled out an Ampex tape box, the 2-inch tape box, put a mic on it, got out his brushes, and he played brushes on the Ampex tape box, which kind of straightened out that figure in the bridge, and that was and it went on the record like that.
You did?
Yeah, Leonard on the nylon string, and myself on the electric, and Steve Metter on the brushes on the tape box, and that was the track. And of course, later on, Jennifer Warnes came in and put background vocals on it, and that was the start of that relationship. At the end of that session, Leonard was very satisfied, and we did 2 songs actually, and he said, that was great, let's do it again. And Henry Louis said, well, he has a whole band, and Leonard said, well, next time bring them all. And so that's exactly what happened. And then Passenger ended up finishing the Recent Songs record. He had it about half recorded when I met him. He had been working with Abe Laboriel on bass and some really fine LA studio players. But Henry thought it would be nice for him to have a band. And initially he thought of us as possibly a good touring band for Joni Mitchell. But of course, we ended up being the touring band for Leonard Cohen, finishing Recent Songs and going on the road.
Wow. It's incredible how serendipity comes in. It sweeps in and makes these decisions for you somehow.
Well, exactly. Like my meeting you, and Charlie, and becoming part of that Leonard Cohen band.
Wow.
All of these convergent things have to happen. I talked to Randy Cobb the other day, the gentleman who passed the tape along to Henry Louis, and I said, you changed my entire life, right? by handing Henry Louis a cassette tape.
It's so wonderful to recognize the people in your life that ignited a new pathway. That's really cool that you said something to Randy and recognized him.
Well, he knows it. He told me he had a call from a French journalist who wanted the whole story.
Really? It's an incredible story. And you and Mitch Watkins, you have such an incredible history creatively, musically, and also faith as well. Having the faith to go out to LA and begin that journey. I'll never forget seeing you backstage, particularly in my mind is backstage at the Sydney Opera House, you two jamming before the gig. It was so wonderful to hear you two, and you have such a chemistry together.
Always. Yeah. I mean, we go back to college days, and and that was just always our thing. Mitch and I were constantly jamming, pushing each other, jazz standards in the hotel room, just like, okay, and we carried it on the Leonard Cohen tour, as you know. We played a little bit after dinner every night before going on stage, play some beautiful jazz standards or maybe an arrangement of a pop tune or something. Just just pure music for the fun of it, for the enjoyment of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working with Leonard Cohen for as long as you did, we all know he was so wise and funny and a true friend in not only in the music world, but just in life. What were some of the key things that you learned from him when looking back at all those years you were collaborators?
Well, to begin with, I think he reintroduced me to the triad, to a straight major chord, because Passenger was a jazz band. We had a couple of incarnations. We would play acoustic jazz and play jazz standards, and I'd play the acoustic bass. Yeah. And we had another incarnation that was kind of a fusion band.
Yeah.
So we were definitely into polyrhythms, polyharmonic things, you know, very broad, expansive sounds and that sort of thing.
Love
And
that.
so we all did. But suddenly it was like Leonard Cohen time, E chord, you know, E, A.
There isn't a second, there isn't a seventh. It's pure
No,
E.
it's pure triad. And it was almost a revelation in a way. It was like, what's that? And you know, so that was the first thing. I mean, we were listening and playing very complex music at the time. And to meet Leonard and shortly after Jennifer, these were artists who had a beat on something more fundamental, I guess, musically. You know, melody was all important. Not complex harmonies, but beautiful melody on top of more or less simple chord progressions. And for us, it was rediscovering simplicity, I guess. Not that you can really say that Leonard's music was simple, but some of it was, at least, you know, for us at that time, to play something like Suzanne or So Long Marianne was not as challenging harmonically or rhythmically as things we had been doing, but so much soul, you know, so much soul, so much heart, so much meaning that, and we all recognized right away that we had stumbled upon a man who was unlike anyone we had ever met. And,
Yes.
and by that time we had all met at least a few famous artists.
Yeah.
But there was no one really to compare him to. Of course, all these comparisons have been made between Leonard and Dylan, but but really, there is no comparison. They're very different birds. And Leonard, we discovered very early on in that working relationship, it's like, this guy is, pardon the 60s terminology, this guy is heavy. Like there's some deep things going on here, you know. And when we started working up songs for the 79 tour, songs like Story of Isaac, you know, which comes right out of the Bible pretty much. It's about Abraham being asked to sacrifice his son. We were just like, wow. You know, we'd have conversations like, you know, Steve Metter, the drummer, would come up to me and he'd go, man, did you check out Story of Isaac? And I'm like, yeah. Wow. So it was a game changer for all of the Passenger guys. Yeah. And then the coup de grace on that was meeting Jennifer when we started rehearsal for the 79 tour. Because Jennifer is such a great interpreter of song and has such an incredible melodic sense.
Incredible.
And harmonic sense. You know, what I really always enjoy hearing Jennifer do is put background vocals on, because she hears the right harmonies. And so many background singers, especially if they come out of a folk tradition, you know, they'll sing those parallel harmonies sometimes that don't exactly work, you know. But Jennifer, man, I mean, every note she chooses is the right note, and she has such an incredible sense of melody. And so between the two, between Leonard and Jennifer, I got another education. All of Passenger had gone to the University of Texas and played in the jazz ensemble, and we could all read music, at least to some degree. You know, we actually had proper musical educations. But this was the second education. And this was the education in the real world. Now we were
University of Leonard.
University of Leonard. Yeah. Now we were making records and touring the world. And yeah.
Incredible. We've had some wonderful comments here. We have Katri and Piotr, Mike. Hi, Hattie and Roscoe. So great to see you. We've got Greta saying, hello from Belgium. We have James, hello from Ireland. Jeff says, wow, Roscoe Beck. We have Rosanna.
Oh, fantastic.
We have Patrick saying hello from Paris. Eddie says, I just want to thank you both for some of the best memories of my adult life at Caesar's Palace here in Las Vegas. Those 4 nights will live with me till the end of my days. And Christoph says, great conversation. Greetings from Germany. So thanks everyone for tuning in here with Roscoe Beck.
Yes.
So we've talked about how Leonard musically impacted you. How about personally, about how one walks through life and how one approaches challenging situations? What do you feel you witnessed of Leonard's practice, and how did it influence your own?
In a word, grace.
Mm.
Could add much to that. Style, character. But personally, wow, it's hard to describe, and you know this, Hattie.
Yeah.
The impact that actually getting to know Leonard might have on one. Something that strikes me is I remember reading an interview with Jennifer Warnes, actually, slightly after the 79 tour, and she was recounting the changes that happened after that tour.
Yeah.
And she described it somewhat as a disaster area, in that she said, well, what happened on the 79 tour? Well, Steve Medder's wife had a baby that he was not able to be there for the birth of. Mm. Bill Ginn, our wonderful pianist and writer, was having some personal issues out there, and got off the tour and got a divorce. Mitch Watkins, same thing, came off tour, got a divorce. Paul Ostermeyer, the sax player, seemed to be the only one who kind of got through it without a scrape. But I too was engaged when I went out on the tour, and when I came back, I broke the engagement. And there were 2 divorces. So one thing that happens on Leonard Cohen tours is that it will shake things up. Yeah. So if there's some things going on in your life that you haven't resolved, you might find them hitting you in the face. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. A lot changed after that. And I remember Jennifer writing, she said, it was a disaster area. Mitch got divorced. Bill got divorced. Roscoe broke his engagement and started wearing suits. What were you wearing before that, Roscoe? Well, honestly, I had a tendency to dress up even before that. Well, good or bad, but after that tour, everything was kind of shaken up. But no, the tour that we did, I had many comments after the 2008 through 2013 tour. People would come up to me and say, well, Leonard really cleaned your act up, didn't you? Because of our suits and all of that. And I said, really? Hey, wait a minute. I beg to differ. I can show you plenty of photos pre-Leonard where I'm wearing a tie or a suit or a cap. It wasn't new, but I have to admit his style did change mine somewhat. I was no stranger to the suit or the tie or anything, but it did give me a new appreciation for those modes of attire. And in the current day and age, I say basically I have two ways to dress. I either dress in suits or pajamas, and they're interchangeable because I wore pajamas on the very first show we did in Fredericton. My phone just fell. I wore a pajama top on the very first show in Fredericton. Leonard said, "Hey, you're the musical director. You can dress however you want." And I had this silk pajama top, and that's what I wore on the first show on Fredericton. It was pajamas. So I can honestly say that I've been on stage in pajamas and that I've slept in suits. So that so to me they're interchangeable, really.
I think that's your good epitaph right there. Yeah.
No, my epitaph is, I was having a wonderful dream.
Yeah. Well, we're still having this wonderful dream, being able to listen to you today. And I've been absolutely in Perkland throughout this chapter, collaborating with you on the record we're working on.
What do you think about that?
We're going to come round to that. Highly essential. And actually, I'm just going to check in with some of these messages on Instagram.
Yes.
Craig says, after 20 years of wanting one, I finally bought a Fender Roscoe Beck V. Best bass I've ever owned. Oh, 5 V. Love it.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations, Craig.
And we've got Fly Guy saying, "You're wonderful, Roscoe. I saw you with EJ in Albuquerque last January." And we have Craig Jordan following us. Michael, I saw you with Leonard 4 times. Ontario Guy, hi from Kitchener, Ontario. And
there's Brad Hauser. I know Brad. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Brad. We have Melaine Poetry, my friend Frank. This is so interesting. Thank you. And Sean, your friend, Sean Giddings, A Cosmic Story, Big Love, Roscoe.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Sean. Fantastic.
Hi, Sean. And Sylvia, it's wonderful listening to you
both. Great player
so,
there.
Sean, we have listened to you together, Roscoe and I, so big fan.
We tried to call you for a session.
We did, actually. We did. So may I ask, what are some of the perks and positives of being musical director? And what are some of the challenges?
Oh, the challenges are always the personnel. The perks, I guess, the perk for me personally was just having Leonard's trust. I mean, that was a great honor. Because in 2007, when Leonard called me about putting together a band for 2008, his I'm Your Man documentary had already come out. My brother saw it in the theater and called me up and said, "Hey, your old buddy has a documentary out. You should really see it." So I rented it and watched it, and I think and enjoyed it thoroughly. And I think what I said to myself after I finished watching it was, "Oh, wow. Leonard can work with anybody he wants now. You know, there he is performing with you too. It's like Leonard can work with anybody he wants now." So I reckon I won't be hearing from him again. You know, because honestly, in 2007, he could have had anyone he wanted as musical director or any musician. So when he called me, even though, you know, by then I had known him almost nearly 30 years, I don't know, 25, 30 years at that point. Still, it was a great honor. When he called me, just a great honor to be asked. And also it indicated a great amount of trust. You know, he said this tour was very important to him, that it was going to be his last tour. So, boy, It's such a great honor. That's all I can say about it.
It's beautiful.
Leonard was a friend, but I never forgot. I never lost being impressed by him, even though he was a personal friend. You know, at the same time, I was able to step aside from the friendship and just go, what an incredible artist.
Yeah.
What an incredible personality. What an incredible mind. And what a great privilege just to have coffee with him and listen to him talk.
Yeah.
I mean, like no one else you will ever meet in your life, Hattie, and you know that. We both know that.
I do.
You know, people have asked me what it was like to be in his presence, and I would try to make an analogy like, well, I never met John F. Kennedy, for instance, but I understand he had a certain charisma that people just felt if you were in the room with him. And Leonard was like that. I mean, there was a charisma that one just felt if one was in the presence. And you know, fortunately, many people got to experience that. A lot of the fans.
That's wonderful.
You know, what an incredible human being, and how fortunate we were to know him and to work with him, and you know, and he continues to influence every day of my life, and will to the end of it.
Yep, I agree.
Incredible influence. Yeah.
I feel it. Thank you for that, Roscoe. We're just getting a little bit of music, by the way. I think something's playing. Is it Boy at the Beach?
Oh yeah. Someone playing it.
I could hear it. I think is it coming from your computer?
Anything's possible.
Because a minute ago I heard
Oh,
Love Springs.
Oh, wonderful. That's a happy accident. No, you know, when I set my phone down, I guess I set it down over the volume control, and how wonderful that it played.
It was
a little preview, y'all.
Everyone heard a bit of a preview. We first of all had Love Springs Eternal when you were talking about Leonard, and then we had Boy at the Beach. So it was meant to be. It was just wonderful. So when you are on the road, I know you're such a devoted person that you go through a ritual, and I've witnessed you're very much preparing the space before the concert and being in the right frame of mind. What are some of your tools and the go-to grounding elements? Because I know it's not straightforward for an artist and musician, and also when you're holding space as a musical director or a producer.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the inner dialogues? How do you ground yourself? How do you prepare yourself?
Well, downtime is necessary, as you know. Especially when you're moving all of the time. Yeah. So, of course, when we're traveling, we like to get out and see the sights and meet the people and have a cappuccino somewhere and a little bite to eat at the cafe or something. But that has to be balanced with some downtime in the hotel room. So generally speaking, I would try to make sure that I got enough sleep, really, and enough downtime to be relaxed, to come to sound check fresh, clean, relaxed, ready to get it.
Yes.
And then, as we talked about before, you know, so then there would be sound check and a meal. But then the other grounding element for me, you already mentioned, which was sitting down and just playing duet with Mitch, playing some for the joy of playing.
Yeah.
Play anything we want, you know. Playing for ourselves a little bit, and then go out and give it to the audience.
Yeah.
But that's about it. I guess I left out a little warm up. There's always some warm up that happens, usually before the sound check.
Yes.
But that's it. Very simple. Try to keep very focused when out on the road. So we don't lose things, leave things behind in hotel rooms, that sort of thing.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Do you remember when one of the people on the tour left all their per diems in a pillowcase?
Unfortunately, yes. Oh, and actually, there's 2 rules of the road that I've learned from other performers, and the first one was from Jimmy Witherspoon via Robben Ford, who worked with Jimmy Witherspoon, and I had the pleasure also. And his road axiom was always pack a raincoat. It can be July, over 100 degrees, sunny, pack a raincoat.
Yeah.
Always pack a raincoat. And the other one came from Leonard, who told me on the very first tour, on the 79 tour, always pack the night before.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I remember him saying that to me. I rarely did it.
I have always done it since the 79
I'm a bit naughty
tour.
like that.
Well, the thing is, if you don't, inevitably, one morning you'll be in your bed in the hotel room and your phone will ring and somebody will go, "Roscoe, we're in the bus. Where are you?"
Where are you?
Comes the time when you didn't hear the alarm or you forgot to set it or something. And if you're scattered all over the room, you're going to be 30 minutes getting down to the bus and you're already late.
Oh,
whereas if you're packed and ready to go, which I am, I mean, everything would be in my suitcase packed and ready to go. The toothbrush would still be out, maybe, and the razor, and that's about it.
Well done with your mouth hygiene.
So if that call comes, it's like, "Roscoe, where are you?" Close up the suitcase, downstairs in 5 minutes.
Bang. Right.
So that was the most useful tip I ever had, and it was from Leonard.
That is a really good tip.
He did it too. I mean, I've been in his room many a evening, and he's packing the suitcase.
He took so long to pack his suitcase, and I loved his little pockets and containers with shoe polish written in his beautiful handwriting in silver pen, or technology items. I don't have to be ashamed of being OCD, because one of the greatest minds I ever met packed a suitcase the way I do. He was very specific about his suitcase. I remember he showed me folding the jacket, putting the sleeves in together and folding it, how perhaps his father may have done it, and coming from a family that were very much involved with creating attire. That was a wonderful skill to learn. I've used it so many times, and I always think of it when I do it. May I move on to our collaboration and what we've been working on?
Please do.
So I landed on Roscoe's doorstep in spring 2019. Thank goodness it wasn't spring 2020. And we began to work on this project. Or may I say that I came to visit for a few days and ended up staying, 5 weeks or 6 weeks, was it, Roscoe?
Something like that.
And it's been such a thrill and a joy to work with Roscoe on this project. Not only to witness you in a different format to being on the road together. Of course, we have a musical language that we very much connect with, but to see Roscoe holding space in the producer's seat so wisely and creatively as you do, and keeping the channels open and discussing how we're going to unfold this body of work. It's been such a delight. So thank you so much, Roscoe.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure.
I'd like you to know that.
Working with you on this record. The story from my end is that, Hattie called from Australia and said she wanted to come to Austin because she wanted to hear Lucas Nelson.
Yeah.
And said, hey, I'd like to come for a visit. And I was like, come on. And once she was here, Hattie played me a couple of songs that she had been working on with Ron Blair and Mike Campbell. And I heard these songs and I said, oh, this is a wonderful direction. This is really great stuff. I said, I wish I had some money. I would take you in the studio tomorrow. And Hattie said, I've saved a little bit.
From my Tom Petty days.
So we contacted a few musicians and booked the studio and away we went.
Away we went.
And, now at this point we have 17 songs laid down, including the two from your previous work with Ron.
Yeah.
And 14 of which are pretty much ready to mix. I mean, 99% done, ready to mix. So we've come a long way. And
we've come a really long way.
It's been delightful. I mean, when and this is for the folks out there in listening land, when Hattie showed up and played me those songs, I just went, this is great. I just, let's go. Let's finish this out. Let's make a record. It's just one of those things that come along where it's a no-brainer. It's just like, we have to do this. There's no other thought to it. There's no thought of making money or anything. It's just like, we have to do this. The music is upon us and we must do it. And that's where we are now too, isn't it? I mean, we've come so far and we have 14 songs ready to mix. And as I was saying to you the other day, it's like, now this is the hard part because we've come this far and we have to finish.
We have to finish.
We've
come so far.
Yeah.
One of the songs on the album is called Waltz for Leonard, that Roscoe and I wrote together. Roscoe had this beautiful lilting idea on the double bass, and we created a track for the song and then latterly recorded vocals, lyrics, melody on the song. Could you talk a little bit about what gave you the idea for Waltz for Leonard and how you began to unfold it?
Well, you did.
You
gave me the idea.
Did I?
No, when you were here.
Was it me?
When you were here, I had a gig, one of the projects I do called Laboratorio, Spanish for laboratory, with Carrie Rodriguez.
Love Carrie.
Carrie, we all love Carrie. She's a wonderful musician, violinist, singer, songwriter, wonderful. Love working with her. And we have this project called Laboratorio, which it's a laboratory for bringing in outside people because we haven't performed obviously in over a year, but when we did, it was once a month and we would have a new guest artist every time we went on stage. So we never played the same show twice. So it was always interesting bringing in new people, mostly Hispanic artists.
Yeah.
But it cross-cultural. It's Spanish music and, with other influences. And obviously not all musicians were Latino. Wonderful experiment. Anyway, so we had a gig at the Cactus Cafe, the same spot where we did our pre-show with Leonard in 2012, I think it was. Anyway, we were at the Cactus Cafe, and one of the songs we were performing that night with Laboratorio was in the key of G minor and in 3/4 time. And you were going to sit in on on this gig. You did sit in on this gig on harp.
Yeah.
And so just before sound check, you were just playing G minor in 3, in 3/4.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, you were just playing, because one of the songs was in G minor and it was in 3. So you were just playing the G minor, kind of warming up.
Mm.
And at some point you went to the 4 chord and then back to the 1, I guess. You were just kind of going between 1 and 4, as I recall.
Yeah.
But I started hearing something, and I just started calling out changes to you.
I remember that.
Yeah, I just like G minor, and I had my acoustic bass too, and C minor, So I just started calling out the changes just completely off the top of my head, and then it was like, okay, B flat, and that was to the bridge.
To the major.
And I wasn't even sure where I was going. I was just trying to think, okay, what chord is going to work next? But actually, in that moment before sound check, with me just calling out changes to you, we had the whole form right there, and you were playing it, and I was playing it, and I was calling out changes. Then I said, "Oh, we have to remember this." I said, "This is good." And I said, "You know what this is? This is Waltz for Leonard." Wow. And I explained to you why that title, because there's a small tradition in jazz, and I believe it started with the great jazz pianist Bill Evans Trio. Bill Evans wrote a song called Waltz for Debbie,
Yes.
which is a very, very popular jazz song in the Bill Evans repertoire, and Bill Evans, very popular jazz pianist. Some years later, Chick Corea, another fabulous jazz pianist, as a tribute to Bill Evans, wrote a song called Waltz for Bill Evans. So you had Waltz for Debbie, you had Waltz for Bill Evans. And so it just came to my head, okay, in that tradition, Waltz for Leonard.
Yeah.
And so we recorded it on the iPhone at the Cactus Cafe. I said, we have to remember this, because we had the whole song. We had the whole song form, bridge and all, right there. I said, we have to remember this. So we recorded it on the iPhone. And then when we actually went into the studio, it was the very first thing we recorded. We played for the guys a beautiful video of Leonard in 1979, backed by the 79 tour band. But it was just a cameo of Leonard and the great violinist Rafi Hakopian, and how beautiful and how much they seemed to be enjoying what they were playing. So we played it for the guys, and just to kind of put the spirit into it, and said, okay, so I wanted to show you this beautiful video of Leonard just to get in the mood. And then, I said, okay, so now we're going to play this waltz, just a straight waltz. No embellishments, nothing fancy, the way Leonard would have played it.
Yes.
Real straight, traditional. And that's what we did. We just laid the track down, nothing fancy, no embellishments. And then, of course, later on, you surprised me how quickly you wrote all of the lyrics. Because later on, I came to you and I said, I might have a few ideas to loan for the lyrics. And you were like, oh, it's done already. I was like, oh.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, oh, well, you're ready to sing it then.
I remember when I went in to sing it, I didn't actually have all the melody, but you said to me, let's do it. And I thought, wow, I'm really gonna trust the channels and see if the melody comes through. And I love the way you challenge an artist like that. You challenge me, because I think it really takes a reaching inside and being present in the moment. And I think that's probably from not only your talent in the studio, but also your experience, knowing how to bring that out of someone.
Well, it's not so hard to get out of you.
Well,
it's
Um,
talent overflowing.
wow.
You know, that's what was going on in 2019 when Hattie showed up here in Austin. By the way, she was just bursting with ideas, and songs were just flowing. I mean, I'm sure you remember when you were here, you weren't sleeping all that much, and one evening after we worked till about 2 a.m. on another song, I said, "Now, Hattie, if you don't go to sleep tonight, I'm going to be really mad at you. Now get some sleep tonight." And we quit about 2 a.m. And then I think we got together about 9, really early in the morning. And I said, "Did you sleep?" And you were like, "No, but I wrote a song."
What song was that one?
Okay, let's hear this. It was Ruined in the Rain.
It was Ruined in the
And I
Rain.
said, "Okay, well, let's hear the song then." And you played me Ruined in the Rain on your harp and sang it fully completed. You'd written it overnight. And I was just like, "Okay, you don't have to sleep. That's all right. Just keep doing what you're doing." I mean, music was just flowing out of you. And I'm so lucky to be in the right place at the right time when you were just so inspired.
Yeah.
So, and that's what all this music is, and I hope everyone out there gets to hear it all.
Thank you.
As an album before the year is out.
Yes,
Some
I hope
folks
this
out there
too.
might know that Hattie has already released a couple of these songs.
Yes.
Shakespeare Shores with a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
Never Just Your Daughters, also with a video on YouTube, and 2 more to come very soon.
2 more to come.
One next week, is that right?
One next week. Yeah, next Monday is a special new video, so I'm so excited to share that with everyone.
The one I accidentally played a little bit of a while ago.
I love it. We had a little preview.
Mm-hmm. So there's music out there people can already hear.
There's music
Shakespeare Shores, Never Just Your Daughters, Boy at the Beach coming out next week, and then there'll be a 4th video as well. And hopefully we'll get the rest of the record mixed and put out sometime this year. But it's really a fabulous record. It's one of the best things I've ever worked on, really.
Wow, thank you.
It's a real privilege to work on it. And for all your Hattie Webb fans out there, you're gonna love it. You really are.
Wow.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it. And you know, you've been the most wonderful guardian and supporter of the creative vision for this album, and it wouldn't be what it was without you holding down the fort in the most extraordinary creative ways in which you have. Talking about Shakespeare Shores, you play fretless bass. Can you share with everyone what your setup was for that? Because I mean, your bass on that song is just breathtaking, and I'm sure I'd like to hear about your bass setup. So, would you be willing to share some of that?
There
it is.
That's the very fretless bass right there.
That's it. Do we get to hear it?
Well, it's not plugged in or anything, so
no. Yeah.
You know, lovely. And that actually is a Roscoe Beck signature bass there.
Woo!
Which was made, fretless. Well, that just makes me think again of, the fretless bass. That kind of, it shoots me right back to 1979 because I realize I did know the great bassist Jaco Pastorius. I met him around 1976, I think, 75, 76, right at the time he joined Weather Report, had just joined Weather Report.
Wow.
Made that wonderful album, Bright Size Life, with Pat Metheny. And he walked into a club where I was playing in Austin, Texas, with a jazz trio. and I met him, and he played an entire set on my bass that night, and then wanted to play drums on the next set. So I got to play with him. I played bass, and
He was
played
originally
drums.
a drummer, wasn't he?
I don't know if he was originally, but he is a very good drummer as well as a bassist. Pianist and composer and everything else. But I got to know him, met him on several occasions, and as I said, he played on my bass the night I met him, and I still have that bass. But I realized from this distance that he had so much, like Randy Cobb, he had so much to do with the circumstances that led to meeting Leonard Cohen. Yeah. Because Henry Louis was drawn to my playing because I played fretless bass. Because he had been working with Joni, with Jaco Pastorius, and that sound was in his ear. And so when Henry heard Passenger, he heard a lot more of that sound because I play fretless bass and, of course, the upright bass. So I think that was the sound that drew Henry in, that led to him calling me, that led to my meeting Leonard Cohen and everything that came after Jennifer Warren's everything that came after, came as a result of the fact that I played a fretless bass at that time.
Incredible.
Yeah, and after that, I mean, the fretless bass was popular in the 70s and perhaps into the early 80s with, players like Pino Palladino still played fretless. And then it seemed to go out of fashion.
Yeah.
You just didn't hear it anymore. Upright bass, a real acoustic bass, kind of came back into fashion, but the fretless electric kind of went away. But for some reason, it seemed so appropriate to your music, to the things you were doing.
Yeah.
And, what a joy to get back to the instrument, too. Ever since we've been working together, I've been playing a lot of the fretless electric bass, of course, the upright, too. But less and less fretted bass lately, because of that sound. It's just such a wonderful human sound. There's something about the fretless and the upright that has a much more, it will let you deliver a more human element. Leonard called it the singing bass.
Yes, it's like a voice.
Yeah. Early on, when I played on Gypsy's Wife on the Recent Songs album, he referred to it as the singing bass.
The singing bass. That's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It makes complete sense. So that's what I have in mind now when I play this instrument, is like it will sing if you let it, and if you know how, it will sing. It's more expressive.
Yes.
Than a fretted bass can be. And so, I have you to thank for it in a great way, because in recent years, I hadn't played that much fretless. And now, as you see, it's just right here.
Beautiful. And I love the way you play, because you do use vibrato and moving into a note. It's not just a direct, solid attack on a note. And I find it so expressive, so musical. And of course, your playing is just so wonderful, so inspiring. Well, joy to hear you. Joy to hear you.
I have to thank the people who inspired me,
Yes.
On the bass, everyone from Scott LaFaro with the Bill Evans Trio on the upright bass to Jaco.
Yes.
And everyone in between. The great Ron Carter and so many other great bassists have shown me the way.
That's incredible, Roscoe. May I ask you about Stephen Barber, because you two have such an incredible connection.
We do.
And Stephen Barber did 3 string arrangements for the Wild Medicine album, and they are so lush and inspiring. And I know you and I have both shed a tear listening to his string arrangements. In fact, I often say that one of the most trustworthy elements when you're on the right lines are Roscoe Beck's tear ducts. Like when we did when we were recording You'll Accompany Me.
Mm-hmm.
Which take was it that ignited the yeah, it's that one, that take.
Mm-hmm.
And you and Stephen have such an incredible connection creatively and spiritually. Can you tell us about how you guys work together, how you cross paths, any juicy bits?
Well, we met through Eric Johnson.
Okay.
Eric Johnson is a dear friend, and I work with him still to this day. And we've been working on his new record lately. And Stephen Barber Eric was in a group with Steve Barber when I met him at the age of 20. I was 20, Eric was 20. Steve is 2 years older than both of us. He would have been 22.
Nearly your birthday.
Yes, actually tomorrow. And yeah, Steve Barber and I have the same birthday, as a matter
Incredible.
of fact. So we call ourselves, brothers from different mothers. And Stephen is just wonderful because we hear kind of the same way. We hear the same things, but we come at it from different directions. I'm a bassist. He plays piano.
Yeah.
And I love working with Stephen, and I often call him in when I'm producing or co-producing something, whether or not I need a string arrangement. I will often call him in and just, play him a song in progress or something and go, what do you think?
Yeah.
And he'll often come up with the one element that I didn't think of. He'll make some suggestion that I just go, yes, that's it. On Shakespeare Shores, it was the prepared piano.
Oh, that was just brilliant. I love that idea of his.
Yeah. And he's really wonderful that way. I mean, he's such an incredible arranger.
Yeah.
And just has such great musical instincts. And we work really well together because I do the things he doesn't do, and he does the things I don't do. I could put together the track for him, for instance. He did a string arrangement on the latest Jennifer Warnes album. And I remember when he came in and he heard the track that Jennifer and I had done, he was like, oh, you guys are just the dream team. He was so inspired by the track. And then he went off and wrote this beautiful arrangement, so, and when he brings it in, it's like, oh yes, it's exactly what I was looking for, so we hear things in the same way, and he appreciates the work that I do, and I really appreciate the work that he does. And although we've never actually been listed as co-producers, he's often a silent co-producer because the fine elements that he brings, be it the string arrangement or just the one little suggestion like the prepared piano, or on other projects he suggested, what do you think of a harmonium, or just the odd thing that might not have crossed your mind. So he's just so wonderful. We love him, don't we?
We love him, and we love to make tea, a cup of PG tips, with a bit of half and half. Not too shabby. Hangs with these wondrous guys.
And he has such a wonderful sense of humor too, which has to be mentioned.
It's such a laugh because you do get very engaged, and to have that sense of friendship and fun is really integral, I think, to the process. Mm-hmm. Do you find that?
Well, the music often the music often will turn out better when there's some enjoyment, some fun in it. I mean, not every track is going to be, let's have some fun. I mean, obviously there's more serious things and there's more light things. Yeah. But on the lighter things, if one can have a little bit of fun while laying the track, all the better, because you'll hear it. You'll hear the fun that was had, you know?
Yes. I love that. You'll hear the fun that was had. I really relate to that. You kind of hear it in the very essence of the music, of the energy in the musicians.
You can see it with your ears.
And you brought in so many great musicians into the fold for this album. Joel Guzman, Vinnie Colaiuta, Tom Breckline, Eric Johnson, Michael Landau, David Grissom, and Lloyd Maines, and of course the fantastic string quartet as well, the Tosca Strings. Mitch Watkins. So many masters in the mix here. When you actually also Javier Mas and Alex Bublici, who play on Waltz for Leonard, from the Leonard Cohen band. So what is your direction? How do you begin to sew together the musicians you feel are right for a record? How does that come to fruition for you?
It's usually very evident. It usually doesn't take all that much thought, actually. I remember, when you came here and we had decided we were going to go in the studio, and we talked over a few musicians. We talked over a few different drummers and a few different keyboard players. Actually, David Grissom was the very first thought. I remember.
What a master.
We were in a different studio, and we hadn't yet picked any of the musicians. And you said, who are you thinking about for guitar? And there was a poster of David Grissom up on the wall of the building that we were in. And I went, him. And
wow, I remember.
Just pointed to the picture, and you weren't familiar with him at that time. But
no.
I said, trust me, this guy rocks. He rocks hard. He's the guy we want. Because we had already talked about, the concept for your recording, and we were talking about muscle. Muscle, which is what I heard in the tracks that you had already done with Ron Blair and Mike Campbell, that I thought was such a good element to be in your music, to have all of the sensitivity and the beauty, but also have the muscle, and the strength behind it. So, so, after we talked over a few different drummers and a few different keyboard players, and it became real clear that Tom Breckline would be a great choice for the tracking sessions, and David Grissom was instant, and Joel Guzman would be great because he not only played keys, but he plays such a wonderful accordion, and of course we got that wonderful duet with you and he doing "You'll Accompany Me" as a result. So casting is really important,
It's really important. And you are the master of it, aren't you? Because you've casted not only studio bands, but live bands, and how important that casting is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was important for Leonard too, especially this last band, the one that you and Charlie participated in. Yeah, the casting was everything. And especially for Leonard, because it was not only important what kind of musician they were and what they had to offer as a musician, but it was important how they were going to vibe, in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say we never had a difficulty or two within the group, but overall it worked,
Yes.
It was a really good combination of players, and I feel very good about that, because prior to in 2007, when we were just in the talking stage, Leonard told me he said, well, they've made me an offer I can't refuse, and so money is not really going to be the object so much, and I want the best band on the road this year.
Wow.
And I said, oh, so no pressure then, huh? But that's exactly what he said. He said, I want the best band on the road this year.
Yeah.
And, I won't claim that I delivered that necessarily, because there were a lot of wonderful bands out there touring while we were out there. But I was pleased that I was once in the presence of Leonard and Adam Cohen, his son. And we were in Athens, actually, in a hotel lobby, having some Turkish coffee or something. And Adam said to Leonard, he said, "This is an absolute triumph." He said, "This is incredible. Wow. It's absolute triumph on every level." And Leonard agreed. And that was so gratifying to me because, frankly, none of this comes without some pressure.
It does.
And certainly once Leonard told me, I only want the best band on the road this year. And my response was, oh, no pressure then. I certainly felt the pressure. And as you know, there were a few people hired early on that ended up not really making the final band for one reason or another.
Yes.
Because the musicianship was important, the personality was important, and just how is it all gonna fit?
Yeah.
And Leonard hired an existing band in 1979. He hired Passenger plus Jennifer and Sharon Robinson. So I can't say that I put together that band. That band already existed. But I did put the band together for him in 1988, the band that toured from 88 to 93. I assembled that band for him, though I did not play in it. And then I assembled the band in 2008.
Yes.
And it was always a little challenging, to find the right people. But in both cases, in 88 and in 2008, what I said to Leonard, I said, when the right person comes through the door, we'll know it.
Really?
And I tell this story because it relates completely to you. Flash forward to 2008, and we have the whole band assembled, except for the vocalists. Sharon Robinson is in place, and the rest of the band is assembled. And we're already rehearsing, but we don't have all of the backing vocals. And honestly, I was looking for one more singer to be with Sharon, kind of in the model of the 1979 band when it was Sharon Robinson and Jennifer Warnes. So I was looking for that other singer to work with Sharon. And Leonard was getting nervous by March or April of 2008, because I think we started in May, and we were a month before the first show, and we didn't have the band filled out yet. And we had tried many other singers with Sharon, and nobody was quite working out. Leonard was getting nervous, and I was getting a little nervous too, because just the band wasn't completed and time was growing short. And again, I had to say to Leonard, I said, when the right one comes through the door, we'll know it, And what happened after that was Leonard had to go to Cleveland to accept his award at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And while he was there is when you and Charlie came in and played the first time. And I must say that I knew it the moment I saw you two walking in the door. And I was only really looking for one singer. No, I mean, you walked in with the harp. And Leonard had already done the backdrop for the stage, which was a lovely blonde woman, almost an angel, really, I guess, playing the harp. And you walked in with the harp. I mean, you were the backdrop. And once you both played, I mean, everyone in the band was immediately enthralled. Everybody knew it immediately. It's like, okay, done. Now the band's complete. And I called Leonard that night in Cleveland, and I said, I have good news and bad news. And he said, okay, what's the good news? I said, good news is we have our singers. And he's like, wonderful. So glad to hear it. What's the bad news? I said, well, we're going to have 3 instead of 2. And he said, well, all right, we'll see. And then he came the next day and heard you for the first time. And of course, as soon as he heard you, he knew what we all knew by then, which was the right people had showed up. And it takes a certain amount of faith that way. And I've experienced that several times in my career. On Jennifer's album, Famous Blue Raincoat, I felt like Serendipity had played a great part because the right people showed up.
Yes.
I had to call them, of course, but when I called them and they showed up with their A game, and people knew and understood right away that this was, what was needed. They would hear the music and they knew what was needed. And that's why Famous Blue Raincoat was such a successful album, because the right people showed up, and they showed up big time.
It's such an extraordinary record. And as you know, Roscoe, I reference Joan of Arc on one of the tracks on the album because
don't give away all the secrets.
I won't say exactly why, but it's one of my favorite songs of all time. That obviously Joan of Arc, but that arrangement, that production, it's so powerful and current and extraordinary. And what I think you do so brilliantly is creating that movement beneath and with a female voice. It's not so easy to do, I don't think, to hold that space. And for example, that turnaround that you put in at the end of Joan of Arc on your Famous Blue Raincoat record.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You brought that in for the live gig. And when you brought that in, it was like the heavens opened. It was so great.
It's so satisfying just to get back to that major chord at one point, and again, who did I learn that from? Leonard. That particular moment on the record was one I had to fight for. Because when we laid down the track for Joan of Arc, and I had made charts, and the end section is a repeating section. It repeats, I don't know what it is exactly, 8 bars or something, and it repeats on Leonard's version.
Yeah.
And I just thought, and it's all minor key, and I thought, I want a release in there somewhere. I want to feel it go back to a major chord in there somewhere. So I had made charts for the musicians, and there were maybe 2 choruses straight. And then on the 3rd chorus, I wrote that resolution to go to the major chord. And then from there out, just, as it was. And we probably played the track about twice, and the other one or another musician missed that change at the end, maybe twice,
Yeah.
So 2 takes we lost because somebody missed the end, and we were doing live tracking. And at that point, Jennifer said to me, "Why does it have to be so complicated? Just make them all the same." And I had to fight for it. I had to say, no, I have to have it this way. I have something in mind. So I'm sorry. I'm just going to insist on it.
Love
and
that.
of course, we got it with the next take, and all was forgotten. Then if you go ahead, fast forward to, we're doing the backing vocals, and it was 8-part, and I wrote all the backing vocals ahead of time for Jennifer and one other singer to do them all. And of course it does have that resolution at that spot. And when I gave Jennifer that part, what to sing, where she goes, ends on that 3rd of the major chord. when she sang it, she went, "Oh, thank you for that. Oh, thank you." And, I couldn't say, you almost took that out. I almost didn't get the chance to do that, because you were just like, hey, every now and then you have to, if you have an idea and you want it, you have to hold your ground some. I'm a very flexible person, but every now and then you have to hold your ground for something. If you you have an idea and it's strong, if it's a little gem, it's like, no, I'm sorry, I have to have this one. I have something in mind,
Yeah. Well, that is just an extraordinary moment in music.
Well, it was very satisfying, and what was satisfying to me was Jennifer being so satisfied with it. When she sang it, she went, "Oh, thank you for that," because it was almost a religious moment, I mean, it's almost, mid-century church harmony at that moment. It draws you back momentarily into a completely different feel. Suddenly you're in the church.
Suddenly, yeah.
So it's nice, those moments. Thank you for bringing it up.
I love that moment. And Jennifer's voice on the whole record. Well, I'm such a big Jennifer fan and studied her parts so deeply. And really, I said to Jennifer when I first met her one time backstage at one of our concerts with Leonard, I said to her, your creativity has very much influenced me, and it was an amazing process really studying her as a melodic creator. She's a master, and not many people can do what she does to the level she does. She's just breathtaking. So I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Very, very special.
Now, I know that you wear many hats, not just in life, but
battery's getting low because I'm
music and creatively. It's true. How is the process different when it's your own album, songs and material? I love your solo record, Walk On, and being in that different seat with that different hat on. How's your approach differ, and how do you bring to life your vision in that format?
Sorry, folks, but I'm going to have to put where my phone was.
Yeah.
The cord was not long enough. And
don't worry.
Having to hold it and plug it in so we don't go away.
Yay, well done.
Oh, shoot.
I love this about this format as well. We make it work somehow and fun.
Hold on just one moment, Addie. I won't hear you for
Absolutely. I'm just going to bring up a few comments here. Gabo says, hey, Roscoe. Heis is here. Lovely to see you, Heis. France says, you were the best band on the road that year for sure. Sweet Rhythms joined. Thanks, France, for your good vibes. And Gaydel says, happy birthday, Roscoe. And so does Steve. Thank you for your kind wishes. Yeah. And France says, when I think about...
I'm in a shadow. I'm sorry about that.
Don't you worry. We're just glad to see you. France says, when I... Yeah. No worries.
I'll be right back.
Okay, do it. France says, when I think about the Gypsy Wife, I recall your bass in my head more than anything else. That's beautiful. Thank you, France. And Steve says, can't wait to see you back out on the road in 2022. Thank you also for your comments on Facebook. Janice says, my heart is full, my spirit is soaring. Just listening to this lively, intimate, informative visit. Blessings and joy. Thank you, Janice. Carlos says, I'm going to try and speak Spanish. Desde luego, Steve. Yo que os escucho desde Marbella. Diría que Roscoe es tesoro internacional. Great. Thank you, Carlos. Sorry to murder your words a bit there. Steve says, Roscoe is a natural treasure. It's true. Gerald says, so great to hear this conversation with all those precious details while I'm cooking dinner. Thank you, Gerald.
Oh,
Valerie says, love Famous Blue Raincoat. Joan of Arc is my favorite too. Thank you, Valerie. Janet says, Hattie, come back to Red Rocks and bring your friends. Well, hopefully one day we can come back. And Doreen says, two musical geniuses. How lucky am I to have seen you live? Stay safe and well. Oh, Chris asks, is your fretless bass the one from the LC tour?
No, this one's a 4-string. And on the LC tour, I used the 5-string fretless.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Because originally, Gypsy Wife was played in E.
Okay.
So when I played it on recent songs, I played a 4-string. But by the time we did the tour, you know, Leonard's voice had dropped, and he was now doing it in C. And so the 5-string was a better choice.
Fantastic. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Just a couple more comments here, Roscoe. Sharon says it's wonderful to listen to these wonderful anecdotes. You poured your hearts into your work with Leonard and bestowed so many of us with unforgettable moments to last a lifetime, or to life a last time. I feel humbled and fortunate. Thank you. And Will Hadcroft says, well, Hattie Webb and Roscoe Beck, legends, still missing Leonard. And that's Will in the UK. And Mark, Mike, Valerie, Janet, Betty says, hi, Roscoe, hi, Hattie. So thank you, everyone. Hi, Betty.
Oh, so many folks here.
So many folks. So good to see you all.
So happy to see you all.
It's beautiful.
It's wonderful. So wonderful.
We've got another song playing, I think, Roscoe, from on your computer.
Well, yeah, I had to move things around again.
I love it. We have a soundtrack.
What was playing that time?
I couldn't quite ascertain what it was. I don't think it was one of our tracks. I'm not sure. Yes, I was just asking about your process when it's your own album, songs, and material. Right. How does that differ for you?
Well, that's really hard to talk about in that I really almost never set out to make a record. I've only made one. And, you know, I have to speak of my career in general, I guess, in that at some point, I mean, early on when we start playing, I think perhaps we all see ourselves as potentially as an artist, as the artist, maybe as the singer or the songwriter or what have you. And certainly very early on, I might have thought of myself that way. I used to sing more than I do. But over time, I really began to concentrate on my instrument more and put all the work into the instrument. In the passenger days, I did write a lot of songs. I did write songs. But
you're a great songwriter.
But they were instrumental then, because we were doing mostly instrumental music.
Yeah.
But at some point along the way, and again, I think Leonard had something to do with this. Around 1984, I thought, okay, I'm going to make a real effort here. As a songwriter, I'm going to get really serious about this and make a real effort. And I actually moved into Leonard Cohen's duplex on Tremaine Street because he was out of the country and it was empty. And I called him and said, would you mind? He said, no. So I moved into his upstairs duplex with my recording gear and my instruments and started writing in earnest. Maybe a year or two of that. And then I really stepped back and listened to it. And unfortunately, I had to compare it to Leonard's work. I had to, because by then I had already been exposed to years of Leonard's work. And it was somewhere along that time where I really quit thinking of myself as a songwriter, though I have written a few more things over the years, but Uh, I really wanted to concentrate on what my strengths were. And I came to the realization that my strengths were as a player. And then once I started producing with Jennifer, I realized I had some strengths in that area too, because I had the ability to bring people together and create a situation that worked.
Yes.
So, you know, from there on, I really thought of myself as, okay, I'm a bassist producer, as opposed to a songwriter or or you know, leader of a band or artist or what have you. I quit thinking of myself that way and realized my strengths are in supporting artists, not being an artist myself or the artist, the solo artist, whatever, but supporting an artist, which is of course what I've done with Leonard and what I've done with Jennifer and even with Robben Ford, I worked as a co-producer, and with some others, and now with you. So my record, getting back to that, was really kind of an accident, to be honest. It's not that I hadn't been thinking about making a record, because once I had recording gear in my home, it was certainly possible. So I was beginning to think about making a record, but I didn't really have a concept. I was writing songs and recording things, but there was no overall concept, and it was just little bits and pieces of things here and there. And then honestly, my record began as a work for hire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. A company called Line 6, which they make guitar effects and amplifiers and things like that, contacted me about writing music for a product they had coming out called Guitar Port. It did eventually come out, and I think it's already gone away. But they needed original music, and I had a week off at home by myself, and so I said, okay, they wanted 10 original songs basically.
Yeah.
But they weren't looking for anything complex, and I just thought, okay, I'll just write some stuff. Simple bluesy R&B, straight ahead, no big deal. So I wrote 10 songs in a week, which is really unusual for me. But it was a work for hire, and I did it, and then went to LA and actually recorded these tracks for Line 6 and I had an agreement with them where they would get the tracks, just raw tracks, which were Tom Breckline, Neil Larson, our friend, and, Robben Ford, and myself. We were the tracking musicians, and Line 6 would get those tracks for their own use for the Guitar Port, and then I got to keep the tracks and do whatever I want with them after the fact.
Okay.
So Line 6 would release a song as Shuffle in E, for instance, and then I would finish the song, write lyrics, and put a different title on it.
Incredible.
And they would actually publish the track, and then I would do this. So, and they paid for everything. So they paid for studio time, they paid for Robben, they paid for Neil, they paid for Tom rather. They paid me for each song that I wrote, $250, then paid me $1,500 a day for the session work, and paid me extra on top of that for being a producer, because I contracted the musicians. So
do they want to support World Medicine, or
I wish. So the end result of that was that I walked away with a good payday. I mean, I got paid. I made several $1,000s and walked away with tracks with
incredible
with Breckline and Neil Larson and Robben Ford on them. And at that point I went, I have no excuse now not to make
Right. Right.
So,
and what a great record it is. Steve here says, Walk On is a great album, a great opportunity to hear Roscoe play with a variety of musicians and to hear him sing. He has a nice voice.
oh, well,
Thanks for that, Steve.
so you're the fellow who bought it. Thank you so much.
Can I dive in with another question here, Roscoe? We have
Yeah.
one from our friend Chris Bynum. Can
Yes.
either of you talk about the value of being a side person, working for someone like Leonard or Tom Petty? How does that help you grow in the music industry? What do you think, Roscoe?
Well, you should probably answer that one, but I'll just say quickly, I am a side person. I mean, that's what I was just saying.
Yes.
I am a side person. You know, it's an odd place to be as a musician. Odder now at this stage of my life than it would have been earlier, because as a musician, I know exactly what I am now. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a bassist, I'm a producer,
Yeah.
and a session player, and I work well in a session. I work well with other people, and those are my strengths. That's what I am. I'm not the songwriter. I'm not the singer. I'm not the artist with their name on the front of the record. I'm a side man and a producer. And I know that's what I am. I'm happy with what I am, you know, because I realized at some point that I didn't want to be the artist. I mean, that sounds odd as a musician, but I didn't want to be the artist. It wasn't easy. The few times I have done it.
It's not easy. No,
you know,
you're right.
After Walk On, I did have to put a band together and play some shows. You know, a record release party and a few other shows. And being the leader of the band meant that I moved a lot of equipment and had to book the dates, and in the end either made no money or went in the hole after I paid everybody. So it wasn't just for those reasons that I choose not to be an artist, but I kind of realized that's not the path for me. You know, I'm going to concentrate on my strengths, you know.
Yes.
And I'm a player and I'm a producer, and that's what I concentrate on. Now, you know, if we get together and I sing a song, then it's just fun.
Yeah. Well, you're a master at both of those, I have to say.
But you know, I realize, okay, you know, I'm a side man. I'm not like so many of my friends. I'm not like Jennifer. I'm not like Hattie. I'm not like Darden Smith. I'm not like Eric Johnson. I'm not like Robben Ford. I'm not like any of these people who are artists who make their own records.
Yes.
My strength is supporting artists like yourself, like Jennifer, like Leonard. And, you know, I hope I don't sound like I'm boasting in any way when I say that's where I have something to give.
You certainly do. And you not only bring so much to the table, you also have such a sense of love and kindness and creativity, and those elements really impact, because obviously you're very involved musically, creatively, arrangement wise, but there's a part of the puzzle which is that other side. And I'm sure that's why Leonard always came back to saying, no, Roscoe's my MD, Roscoe holds that space, and it's an incredible gift you have to do that.
Thank you. It's such a compliment, and it was such a compliment from Leonard to you know, to be put in the position really for which I'm best suited. You know, so that was wonderful. But why don't you speak to that? Because you work as an artist and a side person, obviously with Leonard and with Tom Petty, one of my absolute favorite performers. I miss him so much. I just you know, such a loss there in both cases, Leonard and Tom Petty. But anyway, you can speak to that because you live in both worlds, artist and side musician. So what was it like for you with Leonard and Tom?
Well, for Leonard, Charlie and I had never been backing singers or held that space. So we really came back to Leonard's voice and the song. That was where our history was. Just really, the song is king and the artist is, no, the song is the crown and the artist is wearing the crown, or the other way around. I'm not sure yet. So we really came about that role as a support singer from that perspective. And the way I see it is that everyone's a cog in a wheel and we've all got a role to play. And I think Leonard really taught me that, not only just about the band, but about the crew members, about the audience, about each person working to create this picture, to create this sound. For me, I think I take the role of being a sideman or a side breaker or a side artist, side musician. I take it so seriously, and perhaps sometimes too seriously, because I'm so focused. Life goes out the window. I'm just, you know,
As it does.
as it does. But my whole day generates around getting to that point where you're on stage, and I'm so at every moment tuning into what the artist might need, what the voice might need, what sound, what volume, what melody or approach, or just even presence as well. I'm so focused that I take that role very seriously, that I respect so much the position I've been put in, and I want to be the clearest channel I can be for the artist and the rest of the band. And so I think being in that practice has really helped me also with writing, because I think it's just about keeping that channel clear and not letting your head get involved, and knowing that it's always a very humbling experience, because the moment you think you're onto something, you're then thinking about it and not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And to answer Chris's question about how does that help you grow in the music industry, I think it's just about growing in life. I think the art is reflecting the life, and your life is the art, and it's so integrated. I'm not sure how to separate the two elements. But in a way, I feel that the fact that Charlie and I came through that journey of being songwriters and having so much respect for the song meant that even though we weren't trained or had much experience with singing with artists when you chose us for the band, you and Leonard, Roscoe, I think we always came to the song and to the music and to the people involved with that central point of just respect and hoping to honor it in the best ways we can.
You certainly did.
Well, thank you. And I think it comes down to it's the same relationship, whatever role you play, whether you're a lead singer or the artist or a support singer. In a way, the connection is just still about holding that focus and trusting the process and trusting yourself. And so even though the focal point is slightly different because it's more towards the artist, the end point is still the song. So whether it's direct to the song as the artist or to the artist to the song, I think that's always what I hold clear as with my arrow, so to speak.
You do it so well.
Thank you. Well, I'm still learning and hoping
I want to say I'm seeing some of these comments here.
Yes.
Someone asked me, is the fretless bass hard to learn? And another comment from France about Gypsy Wife. And someone wished me happy birthday. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to answer some of these texts afterwards. So if you've asked me a specific question, hang on, and I'll get around to answering it for you. Don't want to do it right now while we're talking, but I will. If you've asked me a question, I will answer it.
How about, that was a really good question. Is it difficult to play the fretless bass? That's quite an interesting one. Is it quite a different approach to playing fretted bass?
It's not hard to play. It's hard to play well.
I like that.
Oh, I mean, intonation is so critical on fretless bass or upright. It's absolutely critical, because if your intonation is off, it's going to sound awful. I mean, it's going to sound out of tune. There's no two ways about it. So fretless bass is unusual in that, I mean, you talk about a precision bass, you have to be very precise where your finger comes down, just like on a violin or a cello or an acoustic bass. It has to be very precise. But then you have these other elements that we've mentioned, slides, glissandos, vibrato, all of the other things one can do. But fundamentally, that note still needs to be in tune when you slide up to it. When you get there, it had better be in tune, or the note from which you came, so hard to learn, no. Hard to do well, yes. Always. It's not like a fretted bass. You can't go to sleep on it. You can't be looking this way and your fretting hand is over here. You will have to look at it. And do you
look down quite a lot just to see the markers on the neck there? Do you need
quite a lot? Yeah, quite a lot. It's the difference between playing in tune and not playing in tune.
It's important.
When I met Jocko in the mid '70s, I owned 2 electric basses and an upright. I owned 3 basses. One was a fretted Fender Precision bass. One was a fretless Fender Precision bass, but it was the fretless bass that Fender used to make with just a plain neck, no lines, no markers of any kind, just like an acoustic bass, just a plain neck. Yeah. And I played it pretty well back in the mid '70s because I was attuned to being in tune, but I didn't have those visual references, and I really relied on my hand position, what I was taught to play the upright. I would use upright fingerings on the electric, but just compress my hands a little bit.
Oh, wow.
But I had no markers to go by. And so cut to mid '70s, I'm playing a jazz set in a club, and Jaco Pastorius walks in, and I ask him if he wants to sit in, and he says yes. So there's 2 Fender basses up on stage, a fretted and a fretless. Which one does he pick up? I assumed he was going to go for the fretless, but he picked up the fretted, and he played that for the whole set. And afterwards, I asked him, I said, how come you didn't pick up the fretless? He's like, no lines, man. How do you know where you are? And I was like, well, I learned on upright. I have my hand positions and my fingerings that I rely on. And he said, yeah, but can you do this? And he picked up one of my basses and he just wailed on it. And he told me, quite honestly, he said, you should pull the frets out of that bass. The other one, the fretted. He said, you should pull the frets out of it. He said, it'll really, he gave me a couple of pointers. He said, you should pull the frets out of that bass, make that your fretless, which I did, by the way, when he left town. Wow. And he also, hipped me to playing close to the bridge, because another question I asked him was like, how do you get that incredible speed? And he said, you got to play close to the bridge where the string is less floppy.
That is so cool, because if the string is more floppy, then it's more difficult to have speed. Whereas if it's a bit tighter,
yeah, because it's still bouncing back at the time when you're already trying to get to the next note.
Yeah.
So he gave me a couple of pointers there, which I thought was really generous on his part. But yeah, he played my fretted, and afterwards he said you should just pull the frets on this one. And it was a normal precision bass, you know, with no bridge pickup.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, you should just, you know, because I said, and those harmonics you play, they speak so well. And he said, that's bridge pickup. You got to have a bridge pickup. So he left town. I pulled the frets out of the bass. I put a bridge pickup on the P bass, and I still have that bass. In fact, I pulled it out and was going to play it on Shakespeare Shores, but I played this one instead.
Yeah.
You said this one sounded better, so
I loved it. Yeah. By the way, Michelle Grimaldi's joined us from
Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. And Michelle and I did a wonderful conversation. Michelle really brought the magic. We had one conversation about women in music, and she was absolutely incredible. What a great person.
She is incredible.
Incredible inspiration. My friend Frank Milan says, I play last year's Man to Cry. Do you have an LC song that makes you cry heavily, Roscoe?
Oh, geez, absolutely. But let me think which one really gets me.
Yeah.
Well, Joan of Arc got me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what comes to mind first. It's like Joan of Arc just got me. I do have some sort of spiritual connection to that song because that was the inspiration for me for even doing Famous Blue Raincoat with Jennifer. I mean, Jennifer had her own, you know, whatever inspired her to do the record. And she began talking about doing this record on the 79 tour. But what inspired me was seeing them perform Joan of Arc on the 79 tour as that duet. And every night when we played it, I was actually hearing something else. I mean, we were playing it and I was hearing what I was hearing, but I heard it larger. You know, I heard those voices that I ended up, you know, being able to put on the tag of it. I mean, it brought that imagery into my head. You know, I mean, there was Joan, you know, being burned at the stake, going to the angels. It's like, what else are you going to do? I mean, you got to take it to the heavens. You have to. Yeah. Probably off the point here, but
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Your role with Eric Johnson and Robben Ford, how has that unfolded over the years for you? And do you like wearing that hat in that dynamic with those wonderful artists?
I do. I love them both, you know. And I guess what I've enjoyed most about my career is how many hats I've been able to wear.
Yeah.
Because you know, I've done just about everything but sit in a symphony orchestra. I never got good enough at the bow on the bass to sit in a symphony orchestra. But I think I've probably worked in every other genre of music almost I can think about. You know, rock, soul, country, Tejano music, so many different things. And I enjoy them all. If I didn't, I probably wouldn't want to do it. And certainly we've all done gigs in our careers that we might not have loved or might have taken it because it paid well and we needed to make rent. But I'm at a very fortunate stage in my late career where I can be really choosy and I can say no to things and just say yes to the things that I really enjoy. But that is a broad palette. And, you know,
it is.
Obviously your music, Jennifer's music, can be very sensitive and personal and full of heart. The other music that I play with Eric Johnson, with Robben Ford, very dynamic music. You know, and a large degree of musicianship being displayed by both those guys. They're both guitar virtuosos and both really great writers. And Eric Johnson is also a really wonderful pianist, which most people don't know, but lately he's writing more and more on piano. But both, really wonderful artists and very dynamic music and very challenging music for me to play as a bassist, much more so than it would be to play Show Me the Place, for instance, which is very simple kind of ballad, beautiful ballad.
Wonderful.
Robben's music, Eric's music tends to be very up-tempo sometimes, very dynamic, long solos. There's bass solos involved also sometimes. So it's a very different trip to play with Robben or play with Eric than it is to play with Leonard or play with Jennifer, or for that matter, to play Tejano music with Carrie Rodriguez, which is, just another trip. Or, on session work, I often get called to do straight country things or progressive country things or music which falls somewhere in between, like the work I do with Darden Smith, which is kind of folk and almost pop, but not quite, but that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it, is getting to play these with these wonderful artists. And for me, if the music is sincere, the songs are sincere, and the artist is sincere in their intention, that's where I want to be. That's who I want to work with. Unfortunately, I don't really have much appreciation for music that's made on a purely commercial level. I can appreciate some of it on a purely technical level, or just the artistry of the musicians playing it. But I can almost sense if it's, if it's music made for commercial gain, or if it's music made from the heart. And I'll choose the heart every time. I'm sorry, probably to my own detriment. But I will, it's just, and I guess I'm in a somewhat fortunate position to be able to do that and survive as a musician.
You are, yeah. And I think that does come from a lot of hard work and devotion to get to the point you are, where you can choose what you choose to do.
Well, most of us, if we're honest with ourselves and we really think back, it's like, why did you first start playing music?
Yes. What was the first piece of music you remember hearing that made you feel like, I think I want to play the bass?
I couldn't really say what the first piece of music was. I'll go ahead and date myself and just tell you I was born in 1954. I'm going to be 67 tomorrow. So I remember quite clearly seeing Elvis on TV, black and white TV in the late 50s, even though I would have only been a toddler, hearing that music. But I was listening to everything. I mean, really, as a youngster, I loved everything. I'm not kidding. I loved everything, every kind of music. I had a transistor radio, which was always glued to my ear, and I loved anything that came on it. It didn't matter, if it was Chuck Berry or if it was Mantovani. I loved it all. I really did. I loved my dad's Benny Goodman records. They had a Les Paul Mary Ford record I loved. I loved my brother's folk records. I loved it all. It really didn't matter to me. I loved it all. If it was Theme from a Summer Place, that was fine. If it was Ruby and the Romantics, Our Day Will Come, that was fine. And of course, when the Beatles came out, that absolutely blew my mind. And it was only later, much later, that I became discriminating and started saying, I don't like this, you know. And,
Yeah.
and honestly, I've been trying to get away from that as much as I can. I'm really trying to go back to the child and have an appreciation for everything, even if it's not my cup of tea. I mean, if I were to watch the Grammys, you know, this year, you know, I would feel almost like an alien dropped onto this planet. I know so little of what is, you know, currently popular in the music field. And I guess I don't have a strong connection to a lot of current music. If I can hear folk roots, if I can hear blues roots, you know, Leonard often said it's in authentic, what do I want to say? Not indigenous forms, but basically that, you know, indigenous forms of music, country music or klezmer music, whatever it is, you know. Obviously the Greek music that Leonard drew upon for like
yes,
Dance Me to the End of Love. He talked about traditional musics. He said the magic is in traditional musics. He told me that a long time ago, and I think that's very true, because the musics I can relate to, whether it's old music or new music, if it ties into traditional music some kind of way, it's going to work for me.
Yes.
No matter what it is. If it doesn't tie in some way, often I just can't make a connection.
Yeah.
But I want to, is what I was saying. I really want to get back to the child that really loved everything he heard. Yeah. I really did. It just made me want to be a part of those sounds, you know, on a very basic level. It was sounds. I look with my ears. I really do. I walk into doors and things because I look with my ears. And I always have. So it was the sounds that really excited me. And I didn't have much choice in it. I was a musician pretty much from birth. I think I got a Mickey Mouse guitar for my second birthday. There's a picture of me with the Mickey Mouse guitar. And, you know, and I had a real one by the age of 7. And we did have a piano in the house I used to bang on. So it was kind of inevitable. I really didn't have a choice. It was in me somehow. And as I say, you know, once the British invasion hit, you Brits. Yeah, well, you know, the British did a wonderful thing for we Americans, which was the British showed us our own music, you know.
Right, rooted in R&B, and
it was like, hey, check out, you know, all of a sudden we had British blues bands and British R&B bands showing us what's so great about American music.
Yeah,
you know, and that's why the Beatles were such a hit too, because it had that direct connection. It had that direct connection to blues and R&B and the soul music that was happening at the time.
Yeah,
that's why it worked so well, you know.
Yes,
but
I remember you telling a story about Leonard writing a blues song with you, and writing a song, and you saying, "That's the blues, Leonard."
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, I'm happy to, because it seems incredible almost to relate it. But on the was it the 79 tour or the 80 tour? 79 tour. Henry Louis came out and met us on the road, decided to make a live record, which actually did come out some years later, Field Commander Cohen Live Tour 79. So he had come out and recorded us in London at the Hammersmith a couple of nights. And after that, I mean, we had already done the live recording. We thought we were done. I think we only had one gig left, which was Brighton. So between those two things, Leonard was working on a song called Billy Sunday, which I don't think he ever released. Billy Sunday was an evangelist preacher. I don't know exactly when, 40s or 50s, something like that. But Leonard was writing these lines, and I was just kind of looking over his shoulder while he was writing these lines, and he was writing these 2-line staffs. It was like, my name is Billy Sunday. I speak in the name of God. Oh, 3 lines, excuse me. My name is Billy Sunday. I speak in the name of God, and God is very angry, just in case you think he's not. Those were the 3 lines I saw.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a blues, Leonard. And he said, it's a blues. He said, how is it a blues? Or how do you make it a blues? And I said, well, you repeat the first 2 lines, and then the kicker is the 3rd line. So it'd be like, my name is Billy Sunday. I speak in the name of God. 4 chord. My name is Billy Sunday. I speak in the name of God. Back to the 1. 5 chord. And God is very angry, just in case you think he's not. And that really excited him, because he was just writing the lines, and he hadn't really thought of any music for it necessarily. And I don't think he'd ever written a blues up to that point at all, although he loved the blues, and Ray Charles and many other things. But I pointed out to him, I said, well, you just repeat the first 2 lines, and then you use the 3rd line on the 5 chord. And he said, well, show me how, and I got a guitar and showed him. And before long, we were jamming it on the bus. This was all on the bus, and I had a harmonica in my bag. I pulled out the harmonica. Mitch picked up the guitar.
I love it.
And we played Billy Sunday on the bus, and Leonard was like, this is great. Because he had never really written a blues, and suddenly he knew, how to do it. And was like, this is great. So he called Henry and said, bring the mobile unit back. We got to record Billy Sunday in Brighton. Which we did, but it never came out. Actually, I don't think that Brighton gig was one of our best. It was the last night, but our friend was there. Our friend Rob Hallett was at that very Brighton gig.
He was at that Brighton gig.
The very last gig of the '79 tour. He was at that. He was a teenager, and that's what inspired him. And that's the reason we were on the road from 2008 to 2013.
Wow, that's so cool, Roscoe. I love that.
But yeah.
So I know, wow, here I see on my time, it says 10:22, which is 2222. So I feel like that was just
that's where I live. I live on 2222.
I like that. I know we're coming to the close of our time here, and just thank you so much for these wonderful anecdotes and incredible pieces of advice and hearing about your story. I'd love to ask a 3-fold question to close us up here. The first one is, Can you talk about a day that you look back on with joy?
The day you and Charlie walked into SIR. Truthfully, that was, I'm not just buttering your bread here. That was a joyous day.
Wow.
Because we were stressed about finding completing the band, and when you and Charlie came in, I just went, oh, that's it. They're here. Here they are. I knew they'd show up. As I'd been telling Leonard, it's like when they show up, we'll know it. So yeah, that was a happy day. Really happy day.
Roscoe. Thank you. Really happy day for us too. So glad I met you. So glad we crossed paths. What is a recent favorite song or piece of music or painting or something you keep coming back to that you love?
Wow. Well, I'm tempted to say something off of your record. I mean, because I've been listening to that more than anything. I've listened to these songs hundreds of times, maybe maybe 1,000 times. So I could pick any one song off of your record. They're all wonderful, and they all really inspire me. Oops, fell down again.
Oh, thank you.
But just just so I don't sound so can't find the word I'm looking for. Anyway, if I had to pick something outside of your record, let's say, I found myself about a week or so ago listening to Joni Mitchell.
Wow.
I went back and listened to Hijira.
I love that record.
And listened to that song just to kind of refresh my memory on what Jocko played on it.
Did.
But also, I think maybe my favorite song on that record is Amelia, where it's just her and the guitar.
Beautiful vocal on that song.
Well, just in terms of evoking an image, evoking a picture for you. It's cinematic, in a way. So I hadn't listened to that album in a long time, many, many years, but I did. About a week or two ago, I was tempted to go back and listen to that.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And the final question is, what are you looking forward to?
Your record coming out.
That will be a happy day when
it's called
backs.
Wild Medicine, by the way, isn't it? Isn't that still the title?
It's still the title
of our imagined record. For anybody who's out there, we're talking about this Hattie Webb record, which we've titled Wild Medicine, which really doesn't exist yet. I'm sorry you can't go out and buy it, but it will. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, because I'm old school. I'm an old school guy, and I still think in terms of records. I mean, so many people think in terms of singles or EPs, or digital now. You just buy the single you like or whatever. Right. But it's not the way I think. It's not the way I grew up thinking. I grew up with long play LPs on the turntable, and those were my teachers. That was my school, and so I still think that way. And it's really nice to have a couple of your songs out now on YouTube, as we mentioned earlier. Shakespeare Shores and Never Just Your Daughters is both of those are out on YouTube now, and I think we're both very happy with the work. And it's really nice to have those out, and there will be 2 more videos. But I really want to see the record. I don't know how many songs it's gonna. I mean, we have 14 ready to mix. I don't know how many it's going to end up being. 11, 12, 13, 14. I don't know.
So
but whatever.
We're going to make a decision.
Whatever it is, I want to see it. I want to see the album cover. I want to hold it in my hand, because that's the experience to me. I have just cleaned out a closet in my home, and I'm going to get all my LPs now out of the garage and put them up on shelves again, where I can finally listen to my LPs. And I'm so excited about it, because that has been my musical experience. That was my musical upbringing.
Yes.
45s and 33 and a third RPM LPs. That's still the experience for me. And whether it's on an LP or a CD or even just a digital playlist, that's how I conceive records. So it's not just one song or one point of view. It's a whole thing. You know what I'm talking about. Whether it be Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, how could it's a record. Yes. Or Famous Blue Raincoat, or now your record. So that's the day I'm waiting for. The day it's actually all in one place. Here's because we've been working on it for almost 2 years now.
Almost 2 years.
Well, it has been 2 years for you, certainly, since you started with Ron. Yeah. Probably more than. So I'm a little anxious to get it finished and get it out. Just because I feel so strongly about it that it's really a wonderful record. It's so satisfying to work on something like that you really feel so close to and so strongly about, as I do your record, or our record, if I may say so.
Absolutely.
It's just such a great feeling to have, to feel that that you were able to accomplish pretty much what you set out to do. And while we could have never, we wouldn't have envisioned on the day that you landed in Austin, Texas, that we'd be having this conversation about your record 2 years later. But that's the joy of it, it just happened. Sometimes you can't really explain it other than say it happened. What a wonderful series of fortunate occurrences to make it happen, and it was that way to meet Leonard and ending up being such a part of his career, and the same thing here, just to be in the right place at the right time, and to be available when you were so inspired, and writing all these wonderful songs. So yeah, I want to see it come out, so hopefully people can enjoy it as much as I do, because I really do. I mean, this is a record I'll be listening to for a long time.
Thank you so much, Roscoe. Well,
no, thank you.
Thank you so much for being up for this chat today. It's been so invigorating and so interesting, and I feel like we might need to do part 2, because I have so many other questions I'd love to ask.
That's as I told you, it's hard to get me to talk, but once you get me started, it's hard to shut me up.
Well, I love hearing about your journey, and it's so inspiring. And so thank you very much, everyone at home who's tuned in.
Thank you. Today. It is a journey, isn't it?
It is a journey. And thank you for your questions and for being present with us. And thank you so much, Roscoe Beck, for being here, Mr. Becky, and for talking about his creative journey, which is just such an incredible path, just wonderful to hear. And to also talk about our body of work that we're working on. And I hope very soon we'll have an album for you. We can't wait.
Thank you, Hattie. And thank you, Leonard. And thank you, Jennifer. Leonard. And thank you, Jocko. Thank you, Ron Carter and Paul Chambers, and everyone who's ever excited and inspired. I'm going to be expired very, very soon. But thank you, Hattie, and thank you everyone who have joined us for this conversation, and thank you for your questions, which I'm going to read all of these responses afterwards and be happy to answer any questions.
Beautiful. Well, and also happy birthday to you.
Oh,
happy birthday to you. One day early.
Mañana.
Can't wait to celebrate you tomorrow as well, Roscoe. So warmest wishes to everyone out there, and thank you, Roscoe. Yes. It's been such a delight. Thank you.
It's been fun.
It's been really fun. Night, night, everyone. Happy days.
Ciao.
Stay safe. Ciao.
Until next.
Until next.